many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
To Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. First thing I kind of want to dive into is kind of get into the economy here. And, you know, we've kind of seen a lot of the overshadowing of this. And, of course, we got the debates and everything. I want to go ahead and get into this Ron Paul. Sorry about that. We have a problem with that rebroad from a couple Fridays ago, wanting to rebroad over at the beginning there. First thing I kind of want to dive into, kind of get into copyright, and the TPP, and kind of cover a little bit of that because it's really interesting what we already know about the TPP and copyright and how that seems to all be playing against the everyday person. And I kind of have something that would seem counter to what they're trying to achieve in the TPP. But of course, this also deals with a big company with deep ties to the government. Now, Matt Drudge had pointed out that from what the courts and specifically a Supreme Court justice told him to his face, is that with the copyright and stuff that his website would be shut down for simply sharing a link to a headline with the link to the actual article on the author or, publisher's website. And he's being told that they're going to shut that down. Well, we know that he tends to dig up all the important things for the most part and have them all located in one place so you don't have to search through Miley Cyrus caught naked here and Paris Hilton did this and Lindsay Lohan did that and the royal family is pregnant or all the BS. And he actually covers relatively important topics, but they want to shut him down. And we know the TPP will make it extremely hard, from what's come out, to just share information. I have an article here. Google prevails in digital books lawsuit, does not infringe copyright protections of authors. And of course, we know Google works with DARPA and Boston. They own Boston Dynamics and work with the government. But it says here that it's from thehill.com on Drudge Report. Google Books prevails in copyright lawsuit. The Second Circuit Court of Appeals on Friday ruled that Google Books does not infringe the copyright protections of authors. The court handed the technology giant a major victory over a series of authors who had sued over a decade-old project in which Google makes digital copies of books picked out by major libraries and allows the public to view snippets online. The three-judge panel affirmed a lower court's decision from 2013 that found Google's project falls within the limits of fair use because the work is meaningfully transformed and does not offer the public a meaningful substitute to buying the book. According to reports, Google had estimated it would owe billions if it lost the case. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of Jim Bouton, author of Ball 4, Betty Miles, author of The Trouble with 13, and Joseph Golden, author of the Super Layers. And that was from The Hill. Now, when you hear them talking about copyright when it comes to alternative journalism, alternative media, something that's not a tech giant like Google, Facebook, Twitter, all the giants that tend to work with the government. They're talking about if you reference a portion of an article, they want to make that illegal for you. So if you take a snippet or even a snippet of a video clip, and there was actually a few Twitter accounts that these accounts and their outlet was to keep up with sports, and they would make a Vine within fair use guidelines and have updates about sports events with a short little snippet that was under fair use. Got their accounts suspended and deleted or deleted, and they were in fair use. But they're not ESPN. They're not NBC. They're not ABC. They're not Fox News. They are picking and choosing who to allow fair use by doing these things. And with this ruling, it's not showing that, oh yeah, it's come down on us. What it's showing is that while they're saying they want to do these things, they're showing favoritism to others. And I do want to get into a clip on TPP. It's a pretty short one here. And this one is from Ben Swan Reality Check, truthandmedia.com. And this is what we know about TPP makes it the worst trade deal ever. Okay, here we go.
Right here in Atlanta, a dozen Pacific nations, along with the United States, have finalized a massive trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But is the TPP literally the worst trade deal in the world? This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, like President Barack Obama, is a big supporter of the TPP. The mayor told Sharon Reed that what is really important about the TPP, beating China to other Asian Pacific countries.
It really is essential that we beat China into a relationship with these Asia Pacific countries, and that the United States sets the rules of the road and the terms of the engagement. And we have a very important ally in the form of Japan that we need to send a clear signal to about where they want to place their global future.
So is that the case? Well, the truth is, defining what the TPP actually is very, very difficult. Why? Well, because the text of the agreement is super secret. Now, seriously here, it is so secret that not even all members of Congress have been allowed to read it. Even weirder, those who have been able to read it had to do it in a secret room in the basement of the Capitol building. Seriously. That doesn't mean, however, that we don't know anything about the TPP, and the little bits that we do know about it reveal that this really isn't a massive trade deal. Take, for instance, the latest meeting over the TPP with world leaders who met right here in Atlanta. What were they discussing? The United States argued for longer protections for exclusivity for prescription drugs. The U.S. delegation arguing that the trade agreement should expand globally a 12-year exclusivity period for drugs to treat diseases like cancer. Australia, which allows only 5 years of exclusivity, and 5 other delegations, they argued against it, saying it would keep life-saving medicines from patients who cannot afford them. Well, get this. Doctors Without Borders has now come out against this, saying TPP countries have agreed to the United States government and multinational drug company demands that will raise the price of medicines for millions. The big losers in the TPP are patients and treatment providers in developing countries. The TPP will go down in history as the worst trade agreement for access to medicines in developing countries, end quote. Well, that is not very encouraging. So what else do we know about the TPP? Well, it's not just an agreement extending monopolies for drug companies. It is also an agreement that creates massive global copyright protections. The Electronic Freedom Foundation says that despite its earlier promises that the TPP would bring greater balance to copyright more than any other recent trade agreement, the most recent leak of the intellectual property chapter belies their claims. The U.S. Trade Representative has still failed to live up to its word, they write, that it would enshrine meaningful public rights to use copyrighted content in this agreement. Okay, so the TPP is not good for anyone who uses intellectual property, books, magazines, movies, anything you might find on the internet. It's also not good for medical patients around the world. So is there anything good in this agreement? Well, Secretary of State John Kerry says it will create 650,000 new jobs.
It will create jobs. The net result for the United States will be to grow our economy and strengthen America's position in the world.
Yeah, but that's actually not true either. According to the Washington Post, who gave Secretary Kerry 4 Pinocchios on that statement, the claim that the TPP would create jobs does not take into account income gains in changing wages. According to the government's own sources, imports and exports would increase by the same amount, and that results in a net number of 0 new jobs. A trade agreement that creates no jobs sounds like NAFTA. A trade agreement that creates greater global monopolies on medicine and one that creates more enforcement of copyright and intellectual property, well, that would make it much worse than NAFTA. President Obama must wait at least 90 days after notifying Congress of the deal before he can sign it and then send it on to Capitol Hill. The full text of that agreement must be made public for at least 60 of those days, and we as the public will learn more then. But what you need to know today is that the worst thing about the TPP, something called the ISDS, under the ISDS, foreign corporations would be allowed to appeal legal decisions to international tribunals rather than face domestic courts. And that means that the laws of individual countries like the United States wouldn't matter. U.S. sovereignty in many areas would be lost. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
So what could also happen from this is, you talked bad about the Queen, and that's against proper speech. What are you talking about? I'm here in America. You know, the whole proper or political correct speech. No, freedom of speech. Well, no, because, I'm the one that's going after you as, the royal family, so it's going to be under what I say is law. Let's just look at Matt Drudge, since he's come out and talked about the whole copyright stuff with what the Supreme Court justice told him. Under that, if he shared a link about something foreign, and let's say it was leaked information, and shared the link to an article about that link, and they tried him in court, it wouldn't matter what U.S. law was. It's what the courts. And who do you think would have more of the sway? Matt Drudge or some king, queen, prince, dictator, president, aka dictator, oligarchy? This puts individuals in a very, very bad situation. People, talk about, oh, he's going to use executive order to do this, executive order to do that. No, he just needs a trade deal to go through. He won't have to use executive order. Now, we don't know the whole text, but going by what we do know about the text, what do you think is going to happen with firearms? All these countries that have banned firearms have oppressive governments and a population that has absolutely, no hope for the future, it seems. They just kind of live out there, kind of what we do to a point. But, if you have enough inspiration and motivation, you can still do something here in America. It's very, very hard to do that in a lot of other countries. All they have to do is say, you're not allowed to trade with us if you don't support, a no gun or ban on guns type policy. You must support that to be able to trade with other countries. And then if you go on with us on this, you also have to cut out doing business with local people that, support guns. Meaning you can't work with other companies that don't sign on to this with us. Trade deals can be very, very tricky. And how they're doing it, it's not a trade deal, it's a treaty. And this is actually kind of starting to worry a lot of people, because with so much establishment Congress in there, the status quo, many people think that this might actually go through, and there's not that much coverage on it. Every time you do hear coverage, it's quickly glanced over and then onto some BS that they blast on the TV or the radio. Okay. I'm going to get into a Ron Paul Liberty Report. This one is Syria, quagmire, copyright tyranny, weird politics, and around the world with Lou Rockwell.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Dr. Paul is traveling today, so I am going solo. But I'm not completely solo because I have a good friend of mine here joining me to do the show. And I'm so happy to welcome Lou Rockwell to the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Lou, are you there?
Daniel, great to be on with you.
It's great to speak with you. You know, we talk pretty often, and I benefit from all of your wisdom. We talk about the events of the day. And when trying to think about how we might make that work for the show, I thought, why don't we just talk about a couple of things that I know you've been looking at in the news and I've been looking at in the news, and just kind of see what we think about them together. So if
Terrific.
You know, it's a little bit unconventional to do more than one topic on this show, but why not? Let's have fun with it. If fun can actually be attributed to some of these events. But the first thing I thought we might talk a little bit about is Syria. And as you probably read, you know, there was a rally in Damascus in front of the Russian embassy. The Syrians were demonstrating in favor of Russian intervention. They were thanking Putin, and a couple of bombs went off. Thankfully, no one was killed or injured, but I think the point was pretty clearly made. What I found interesting, and I noticed that Zero Hedge pointed this out too, is that the head of the Nusra Front said two very interesting things. One, he said that Russia would be dragged into a quagmire, and two, Russia will experience what the USSR experienced in Afghanistan. And the Zero Hedge guys said, without putting too fine a point on it, it's kind of interesting that tracks exactly what President Obama has said probably in the last 48 hours. So I'm wondering what your take is on this. What do you think about, just in general, about the events in Syria, how things are going? And then afterward, we can talk a little bit about what some of the candidates are saying.
Well, certainly the U.S. empire has made use of quote-unquote terrorists for a very long time. They used to call the Mujahideen the freedom fighters when they were hiring and equipping them to fight the Russians in Afghanistan under the Brzezinski plan, which I guess is still, in some sense, in existence to try to destroy Russia. And they're certainly making use of whether they're called al-Nusra or al-Qaeda or ISIS or moderate rebels, or, you know, they're all groups that in other circumstances would be labeled as terrorists. They're being armed by the U.S. They're doing the U.S.'s bidding and trying to destroy Syria. Now, why are they trying to destroy Syria? He's the last sort of non-jihadist, really anti-jihadist Arab government. The only one that's not promoting jihadism, in fact, has fought it. It's the same reason they got rid of Saddam Hussein, not because he was a bad guy, although, of course, he was a bad guy. He was a politician. Not because he was threatening the world with atomic weapons and all the rest of the lies, but because they wanted to cause chaos. This is the way empires work. The Roman Empire did it, and all the empires subsequently. They seek to cause chaos in order to divide et impera, as the Romans put it, to divide, to cause chaos, and then to better rule the subject peoples. So it's not coincidence that the most stable regimes, whether it's Gaddafi's, Syria's, or Iraq's, are being destroyed. And I think it's also interesting that both, you know, if we were to give these dictators, whether it's Syria's or Iraq's, titles in the old-fashioned ways, they really could be called the protector of the Christians, because that's one of the things they did. I wouldn't say their motives are any good, but in fact, they were protectors of the Christian minority, which had lived successfully in those countries, those Muslim countries, for millennia. And now, of course, the Christians are all being ethnically cleansed, murdered, or about to be thrown out. Only the evil empire, which is also, of course, the most anti-Christian force on earth, the U.S. empire, would want to do this. So look at all the horrors in Syria, an ancient civilization destroyed. I mean, Syria was a civilized city, Antioch, and a great Syrian cities and culture thousands of years ago. It's all been destroyed. We see, of course, the horrible refugee crisis, which I don't think is a coincidence. Ann Williamson has pointed out that the CIA is involved in channeling these people into Europe, where, of course, the empire would like to cause chaos too. So it's a very nasty, vicious business, and Obama's for it, and the terrorists are for it. No American with any sense of decency or with any concern about world peace should be for it. That doesn't mean I think the Russians are right to being bombing even ISIS. I don't think killing is the answer to any of these things. But will Putin get caught in a quagmire? I mean, certainly, I must say I've always disliked that metaphor for the U.S. It's like, gee, poor Uncle Sam, he's walking around Vietnam and he gets his boot stuck in the mud. He's stuck in the quagmire. As versus being a killer, a murderer, going in, killing millions of people. It's not they didn't have it go quite as well as they wished. That's the quagmire. Will that happen to Russia? I certainly hope not. I hope Russia gets out after doing what they hope to be doing. We'll just have to see. But how were the rebels able to target with artillery shells quite the way they did at just the right time at the Russian embassy? Do they have U.S. targeting help from U.S. satellites?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
But it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, we've seen some reports of U.S. special forces operating in Syria. We'll never know really with any certainty, but we do know a few things, that the U.S. has yesterday or the day before dropped in 50 more tons of weapons and ammunition to the rebels.
Yeah.
And that the CIA via Saudi Arabia sent in, I think, 500 more TOW missiles. And those TOW missiles are targeting the Syrian government's military. So it sort of belies the idea that we're only in there to take out ISIS. It's pretty obvious that, there are other things at play. But, it's interesting. I was just looking. John McCain, our favorite libertarian, has a piece that CNN published today. And he thinks that, quote, Vladimir Putin must be stopped. We cannot shy away from confronting Russia in Syria. And here's the other thing that's great. And I mean, this is the irony. And that they really do think we're stupid, Lou. And maybe, sadly enough, a lot of the American population has been so dumbed down by the media that they are. Mm-hmm. But here's what McCain says. He's endorsing the Petraeus plan for Syria. And we're not supposed to remember, I guess, that was just a few weeks ago. What is the Petraeus plan? We need to ally with Al-Qaeda. So, and I said it before on the show, for 14 years we're told, don't never forget 9/11. And now they're saying you got to forget 9/11 because the guys who did it are now our partners. And, this is, and he's not alone. I was just looking before the show at all the presidential candidates, Chris Christie, Rubio, Cruz, Fiorina, Graham, Carson, Jindal, Bush. They all want to directly confront Russia militarily in Syria. I mean, is it just me, or does this seem to be getting even more frightening?
Well, it is more frightening, and some of these people do want to bring on a world war, and I think they can have a world war that won't go to the ultimate step. I certainly hope the ultimate step never takes place, because of course they can pretty much destroy the world. Why, by the way, is it the U.S.'s business who's running Syria? Why? I mean, is that there's never any justification made. Of course, the U.S. seeks to be the world government. It pretty much is the world government, except for Russia and China. Those are, of course, by coincidence, the two hated countries. And it really makes no bones to anybody in any foreign country realizes the U.S. is the global empire and thinks just as ancient Rome did, and I'm sure Babylon in those areas, and Syria and the Egyptians, and there's been a very rotten human history of empires. They think it's or Genghis Khan, who thought it was a terrible blasphemy against the gods for anybody to resist his conquests. That's sort of the way the U.S. feels, and it's a terrible thing. What's going to happen? I don't know. It is good that Obama's so unpopular all over the world as well as here. Will that help? I don't know. U.S. has obviously big financial troubles. The dollar has troubles. There's all kinds of terrible things going on. But the key thing to the U.S., even above anything else, is murdering people. They want to kill. The biggest arms supplier to the world. One of the few good things the Pope said to Congress was, you shouldn't be supplying arms to the world the way you are. So that, that's, of course, it's an evil thing. And if anybody else were the arms supplier to the world, you can bet the U.S. would be denouncing them.
Absolutely.
But because it's the military-industrial complex, of course, it's all a wonderful thing. Killing, it's wonderful.
Exactly. Well, let's switch over to topic 2 really quickly. And I think you probably were interested in this. Matt Drudge interview with Alex Jones. It was really something very dramatic and also very unusual. But really something that struck me in it, and actually the media has picked up on this as well, is Drudge's assertion that really the internet as we know it is done for. The Drudge Report, which uses headlines and hot links as its bread and butter to other sources and sites, will be over, he says, and he was told by a Supreme Court justice. People find that strange, but at the same time, he's saying that the internet is basically going to be put into ghettos of Facebook. You can go to Facebook or Twitter or these other sort of safe places. And so the use of copyright laws will restrict it greatly. And, we already know, we did a show recently on the TPP, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation pointed out that there's plenty of copyright enforcement in that agreement as well, and a lot of it's going to go after fair use, which I know you make a lot of use of, and we do at the Ron Paul Institute as well. Are you worried about the future of the internet and the future of sites like yours, LouRockwell.com?
Well, I am worried about the spying. I'm worried about the government's bias towards Google and Facebook and Twitter and other official sites that cooperate with the regime. They'd like to restrict it. All that is exactly right. But I think Gary North had a recent article about Matt Drudge doesn't need to worry. Robert Wenzel made a similar point. If you just think about it, when Drudge links to an article from a publication, they must have a party. I mean, they get such unbelievable traffic. So are they really going to be interested in shutting that off? It would have to be shown to me about why they're going to be hurting themselves, because that's what they'd be doing to try to bring this about. Also, they can't enforce the copyright laws they've got now. The movie makers, the big music makers, would like to really crack down on a lot of music and movie use that gets that kids and others are engaging in. They don't like it. A lot of stuff, though, so they keep passing more laws. But I think one of the happy things that we can think of these days, these laws are not having quite the effect they used to. When they pile on law after law after law, doesn't mean anybody obeys them. It's a very, very good trend that people are disobeying the laws or just ignoring them. So Matt Drudge is a very smart guy, very creative and accomplished guy. And I don't know, Anthony Kennedy, whoever was talking to him, about this sort of thing, and sort of, I guess, going, yeah, this is going to be happening to you. I don't think so. If I had to bet, I'd bet that Drudge is going to outlast the Supreme Court.
That's great. Well, I can't avoid talking about this topic with you because, as one anti-politico to another, you've addicted me to something that I hate. So I should be angry with you, but I can't stop clicking on political theater. I'm just constantly clicking over and over again. I mean, this to me seems the most unusual GOP race that I can remember. And I know you follow the history of politics as well. Do you ever remember a stranger time for the GOP, for the primaries?
Well, only because, of course, it upsets the establishment. I think there have been times in American history when that's happened before, but certainly in my lifetime as a political observer, I've never seen anything like this. It's fascinating. It's entertaining. I always run this political theater blog on LouRockwell.com every 4 years. I wasn't, in the past, I was thrilled to do it because of Ron Paul running. This time I was sort of not looking forward to it. I was sort of feeling a duty. But I'm having the tremendous fun out of it. And, of course, it's basically because of Donald Trump and how he's shaken things up. And is he really a good guy? I don't know. He does raise issues that I think are important, and the establishment has attempted successfully to silence for decades. That's a good thing. The whole establishment hates his guts. All the left libertarians hate his guts, which is the Koch brothers hate his guts. Sheldon Adelson hates his guts. And in part because we were talking about this off the air, but as you hilariously put it, I'm going to change my title, by the way, to the incredibly shrinking billionaires. So From 2012, all the predictions were, and all anybody cared about was, who's Sheldon Adelson going to back? Who are the Koch brothers going to back? And the Kochs were talking about, we're going to run the Republican Party. We've got the best information and computer system. We're going to make it available to any candidate, except Trump, by the way. Any candidate can have it. It's better than the RNCs, and we're really going to be taking over, and so forth. And the super PACs are going to rule the roost. Well, it turns out the super PACs are not so super, just like the billionaires are not so billionaire, because their money isn't working this time. It seems like, and I'm only going on relatively small evidence from New Hampshire and the Bush campaign and some others, that massive amounts of advertising don't actually help the candidate, may hurt the candidate. People are sick of standard political advertising. And, of course, Trump is not doing any advertising. He doesn't need to. And it's an entirely new campaign. I also hear from friends that the Kochs are worried. They've had battles with Trump in the past, and he's actually a guy who can go up against them intellectually and in personality and even in money. He's not as rich as they are, but he is rich. And were he to be president, unfortunately, Trump is not against all crony things, but he might very well be against crony capitalism for the Koch brothers. And, of course, they have many crony deals. So that would be all to the good, even if it wouldn't be a perfect thing. I also notice he seems to be the most dove-like, if that's quite the word, of all the Republican candidates. He's said stay out of Syria, and he's opposed the Iraq War. He said a few good things. He's no libertarian, unfortunately, but who is, except of course Ron Paul. And unfortunately, he's not running this year. Although I keep thinking, wouldn't this have been his year had he decided to do it?
Well, exactly. But we don't have to endorse Trump. We don't have to be in love with him to analyze this very peculiar situation. And it makes me wonder, why does he resonate so much with the American people? The elites would say because they're dumbed down, they're used to reality shows, and he talks to them. They're very upset about this. But why do you think he's resonating so much with the American people?
Well, I think first of all, if you just look at some of the other polls, the vast majority of Americans think the country's on the wrong track. They think things are getting worse. They don't trust the government. Republican primary voters don't like the Republican Party, or at least its apparatus in Washington. There's a lot of revolt and incipient revolt going on. So and also they like the fact that Trump is a man of accomplishments, not entirely to your taste or mine, but he's a guy who's accomplished things in life. They also like the fact that he criticizes political correctness. They think the fact that he's trying to make mass immigration, government-subsidized, government-stimulated mass immigration. Jeff Dice said to me yesterday, Trump at the next debate ought to say you guys who want to bring in 100,000 Syrian refugees, what town are you going to put them in? And because if we look, they put Somalis in Lewiston, Maine, a huge number of Somalis in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They put Kurds in Chattanooga. I mean, do the people of Chattanooga, do the property owners, the taxpayers of Chattanooga, or the American taxpayers get to say anything about this? No, it's just the government can do whatever it wants to the American people, and they better like it, or otherwise they're a bigot and all the rest of the nonsense. Yeah. So people like the fact that Trump is, and they think speaking truth. Doesn't mean that they think things he's saying are ultimately true, but I think the vast majority of people think he is saying what he actually believes. Whereas with the other politicians, you can be guaranteed they're never saying what they actually believe. They're always trimming and lying and doing a dance. So I think it's a combination of people not trusting the government, worried about we're all getting poorer, we're worried about our kids, our grandkids, what's life going to be like for them, and so that's why people are open to a populist approach. And Murray Rothbard, who was a strong supporter of populism, always felt that this was the way you would get. It's not enough to repudiate economic error, although that's extremely important. It's not enough to champion liberty, although that's extremely important. But you have to get the people upset. He always said, you have to make people realize that the elites are ripping them off. They're stealing from them. They're picking their pockets. They're making their lives worse. They're hurting their children. They're hurting their communities. I think that some of that is happening. That's why populism is popular. And so we just have to see. I don't, they adopted all kinds of rules for the last Republican convention to prevent Ron Paul from ever actually getting a nomination. Those are all still in existence. Can they actually stop Trump by rules and other machinations? They may very well be. But they might be afraid to, because if they did that, he certainly is going to feel free to run as an independent, because he said he would stick to the Republican rule book as long as he was treated fairly. Well, then blocking him from the nomination would not exactly be treating him fairly. And I myself would love to see him run as an independent. I'd love to see the Republican Party go down the drain. As they're morally down the drain, let them go physically down the drain, too. But, we have to see. But it's all fascinating. It's all interesting. Yeah, and I agreed with what Trump said yesterday, that somebody from CNN said to him, we have to find some way to get you in the Democratic debate, because otherwise nobody's going to watch it. So very funny. That's and great. True, of course.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lou. We're running out of time here, but it was so great talking with you about these different things. And we'll all continue clicking on your website and clicking on Political Theater. So I want to thank you very much for joining us, Lou. And I want to thank all the audience for tuning in to the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Thank you, Daniel.
Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Go check them out. Subscribe. You can also go to ronpaullibertyreport.com. I do disagree with Lou Rockwell on one thing. I think with copyright laws, they can push any type of alternative media underground, where you'll have to have Tor network to access it and things like that, and it'll constantly be a race to keep ahead of them, spying, which they're actively always trying to break encryption, and they get so far, and then encryption gets a little bit better, and they have to work to try to beat that encryption. And there's a lot of encryption out there that they can't even break. That's why they kind of got mad at the owner of LavaBit, because he wouldn't give up the encryption key and instead basically shut down his server and erased everything. So they don't like those type of networks. So you get caught with that on your computer, you might get in trouble. They can keep trying to enforce things. But with the copyright and the media thing, they could easily do it where they basically make it where you have to be official, and instead of the Drudge Report, it's not going to be a independent or even, just one corporate media doing what Drudge does. What it'll be is like, Apple News or Google News on your mobile device, or Facebook News or Twitter News, or, the list goes on with the corporate ones that they're big, they're, basically in bed with the politicians, and they will get the monopoly, the shared monopoly, on those type of things. And then, of course, they'll just parrot NBC, ABC, any of the big corporate media outlets. And they could easily take alternative media down. And there's so many great alternative media outlets out there that have slowly been growing. There was a short boost when Ron Paul was still, running for president. The first time, that's when you seen a lot of us, including mine, pop up and start creating something, and technology really grew real fast. And slowly but surely, a lot of these alternative outlets have been able to create a professional, even though people go, oh, that's a conspiracy theorist site or whatever, they have really brought the truth out and try to present themselves professionally and create these media outlets and to shove them underground where things may be crude. It could create basically a tool that no longer will be something that you'll easily be able to reach the youth or young adults. It'll be a very select group of people that are already kind of tuned into what's going on. That's usually why a lot of these people get into using these mechanisms, because they're actively saying no to rules that are basically being, or regulations that are being put upon people as they are somehow law. Even though no law has been passed, they, through EPA or Department of Education or, whatever department, BLM, they push regulations, which they never pass law. They never go about it the correct way, because Congress basically has given their authority up to these basically organizations that can then go ahead and force things upon people without it being law. Basically, we get to do what we want. You have to prove your innocence after we've done this. And people go, oh, Bundy should have paid his taxes and blah, blah, blah. Hold on. It's always about the government proving the guilt. And with Bundy, he went to court. The courts were the BLM courts, which people don't understand. They also have their own courts. So the judge is also part of the organization. So they go to these courts that are fraudulent, really. Conflict of interest, and rule against people all the time. EPA likes to do it, or not EPA, but FDA with raw milk all the time. Until you have a sheriff like they did up here. It was Northwestern, I believe, Indiana, where the sheriff kicked them out when they were harassing the Amish farmers. And there's a lot of places in northern Indiana that have where you can buy into a herd. So you become part owner of the herd and the farm, and you get a benefit from the raw milk produced because you own part of it. And they like to go after those people for no reason. And luckily, we have sheriffs around here that tend not to um, like them coming in and harassing. Got Monsanto, little, black ops Monsanto running around the Midwest. So it just it's ridiculous how far things have gotten. And I remember back when I was pretty young and learning about the Bill of Rights and what freedom is supposed to mean. And I started reading founding fathers documents and really started kind of looking at the philosophy at a young age of what freedom meant. And then, just kind of looking at the ideology, philosophy of many different people and how there were similarities and major differences. But there was one thing that in the similarities that allowed it to work, and it was that they were always willing to put their differences aside to get along for each person could have their freedom. Now we can get into racism and slavery, and we can get into that, and that again, they all had flaws. We still have flaws. We can sit there and beat each other up on history of our cultures because white people were slaves too. Different times, different places, and we need to learn from those mistakes. And we need to be able to understand what tyranny is. Tyranny comes in slavery. That was tyranny. But what's happened is the government's played our emotions on what tyranny people have felt in their lives, or think they felt, or been told they should feel. And they've been used that to divide and conquer people. And that's what's allowed them to amass the amount of power that they've had. If people got along and didn't buy into propaganda, they'd be like, and all the racism out there in the streets, and people would be like, what? It's something that they play with their heads. If you buy into it, they divide you, they conquer you. And, this is one thing that they've made a point at, and people don't understand what they're saying. But they a lot of times have said that, we're only doing what we're allowed to do. They're not saying that the Constitution says that you can do that. They're not saying that. People are like, the Constitution doesn't say you can. That's against the law. No. They're saying they're only doing what you allow them to do. Keep voting for them. You keep going along with it every time they do something that takes your rights away, takes your money away, takes your property away, and you go along with it. You're allowing it, and they're only doing what they're allowed to do. Now, I'm not saying go out there and go crazy and hurt people, and no, that's doing exactly what they want you to do. Really, it comes down to being able to just say, you know what, I'm just going to live free. I'm going to live free myself, have my family live free, and learn what freedom is, and find every opportunity. One thing, getting off the grid. Every opportunity you get to become more, self-dependent. Even if you don't get completely off the grid, and you keep the majority of what you amass as backup, whether it be electricity, water, whatnot, you're putting yourself in a better position. You're not dependent if some natural disaster comes through and wipes out power and wipes out maybe a water line blows or a sewer backs up. If you have options, you might be able to, battle that out. Okay, I want to get to this article that last Ron Paul Liberty Report said, Ron Paul was on the road. This came yesterday. Truth and Media. In court, Ron Paul accuses feds of targeting Rand's campaign. Des Moines, Iowa. On Wednesday, retired congressman and presidential contender Ron Paul came to a Des Moines federal courthouse to testify for the prosecution against two of his former top campaign staffers. Jesse Benton, which that's someone that the Liberty movement pointed out last time Ron Paul ran, that he seemed to create a barrier between the mass of Ron Paul supporters, many that were with them during the 2008, that pushed the money bombs and all that. He put a barrier in between many of them. But it says here, Jesse Benton, who is married to Paul's granddaughter, and Dmitry Kazari with Forrest. Paul told jurors that the timing of the indictments against Benton and Kazari were carefully planned in order to pose a threat against his son, United States Senator Rand Paul, who is currently running for president on the Republican ticket. Prosecutors announced the indictments against Benton and Kazari just one day before the first Republican debate, where Rand was set to take stage. At the time, Benton was heading up a super PAC, Political Action Committee, working on behalf of Rand Paul's presidential race. The indictments made headlines across the country. I don't consider that a coincidence, Paul said. I consider that more than seeking justice. In an opening statement Tuesday, U.S. Department of Justice prosecutor Richard Pilger portrayed Paul as a victim of Benton and Kazari's plot to keep him in the dark about hidden campaign payments. However, Paul didn't seem happy about being called on behalf of the prosecution against the two staffers. I'm not testifying for the defense, he said at one point during cross-examination for Kazari's lawyer. I'm testifying for the prosecution, and that's been a heavy burden for my family. Last week, almost all charges against Benton were dropped. An additional staffer, John Tate, was also indicted. All charges were dropped against Tate. Okay. And, it did seem pretty perfect timing to kind of try to put a blow to Rand Paul, and it might have worked. But I also think, people talk about Trump stirring up the Republican Party, and I still think it's a game that, yeah, the establishment doesn't want him for president, but they're not expecting him for president. They're expecting him to drop out. And I think it really was something to try to hit Rand Paul. I think he's going to try to get Rand Paul out of the debates, and then he'll drop out and put his support towards, maybe Carson. I think it's possible. Okay. Give me a second here. Maybe. Okay, here it goes. Okay. Now, I don't know how many of you watched the Democratic debates. I really just caught snippets. I couldn't even watch all of the Republican debates. The political theater, it's almost too much theater for me. A little bit too much theater. And it's grueling for me to watch. Definitely when people, their actions show something different, but then they say another thing, and then they get a big applause. Bugs the hell out of me. It's like, you're really going to buy that? And I sometimes have to, calm myself down. Okay, when I was younger, I would hear the rhetoric and like it, not knowing a good extent of the background of the person speaking the rhetoric. And that later on changed. In my later teens, I started to pay more attention. But everybody talked about how Hillary actually did really, really good in the debates, and like, do we have enough of the populace that is brainwashed, dumbed down, ignorant of history enough to look at Hillary as a true, hope for a future at all? And you hear the mainstream and some of the radicals talk as, she just did great, and you're like, are the radicals the only ones paying attention to the debates? But Christopher Green, AMTV, put out why Hillary Clinton won the Democratic debate. And he puts a few things out there. Let me go ahead and cue this up, and we'll get into this.
Hillary Rodham Clinton wants your guns. So protect your guns with the Safe in Vault store. Click the link below for all those special promo codes. Buy a safe. Again, protect your guns. Now selling Browning safes, and also a special offer for a free pistol safe in the description box below and also in the comment section. That's the safeinvaultstore.com. Click the link below right now. Protect your guns from Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hey, everybody. I'm Christopher Green, and you're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. It is Wednesday, October 14th, 2015, one day after the Democratic debates in Las Vegas. And this is what it felt like watching it.
Okay.
He's eating a
I have
cat.
spikes in my lips.
Respect, LA Beast. Respect. So the first thing I noticed about the debate was that Hillary Clinton won. First impression was the national anthem. It was absolutely horrendous. In fact, I asked myself the question, who was singing that? Where did they find this person? Because she was horrible. And then they're like, thank you, Sheryl Crow. Thank you. Like, wow, Sheryl Crow really does suck.
Through the perilous fight.
Also, did you notice that there was only just a select few candidates? There was a total of 5. Comparatively, you look at the GOP debate, and there was like 1,000 on stage. There was like 1,000 GOPers with Trump at the center and his hairpiece flowing in the non-existent wind. And then compared to the Democratic debate, there was only 5. You're telling me there's only 5 candidates willing to run for president of the United States in the DNC? Really? Only 5? Honestly, it was a shit show, as I said in yesterday's video. But Hillary Clinton won the debate because everybody there, including Bernie Sanders, and this will probably piss some people off, have actually endorsed her. Yeah, that's right. Bernie Sanders endorsed Hillary Rodham criminal Clinton, Benghazi Gate whore witch Clinton, in yesterday's debate. At one point, he was actually given an opportunity on a silver platter to pounce. Remember, this is a debate. You're supposed to pounce. You're supposed to criticize. You're supposed to attack. And he made a very profound statement. He said America is tired of the damn emails. Take a look.
Let me say it may not be great politics, but I think the secretary is right. And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too.
You know?
Tired of the damn emails, Bernie? Tired of the damn emails. You know, that was your perfect opportunity to lay into that bitch, to lay into the criminal that makes up Hillary Clinton. You know, the former Secretary of State responsible for the deaths of CIA liaison Christopher Stevens, several other Americans, lying about gun trafficking guns through Libya, what made up Benghazi Gate into Syria, which is now where we're at war. Whereas now where Barack Obama is not just drone striking, but air striking and arming the moderate terrorists on the ground, which they've now coined a new term. It's like Syrian opposition freedom or something like that. They always come up with these, fancy taglines. And just like Al-Qaeda sprung into ISIS, they just trick you through semantics and words. So it was the perfect opportunity to attack Hillary Clinton because, again, what do we have in American politics today if you don't have character? If Hillary Clinton is a lying POS, a scumbag, a criminal, somebody who blew up her email servers as she was Secretary of the State, it wasn't just wrong, it was illegal and also criminal. It's why the FBI is investigating. Why didn't Bernie Sanders lay into her? It's a good question, isn't it? Well, he didn't lay into her. He even upped the ante. He friggin' endorsed her. Absolutely incredible. I found it actually just par for the course because it shows you what a choreographed, staged event this was. You notice Anderson Pooper there with this purple tie? Nothing against purple ties, but Anderson Pooper, as I like to call him, has CIA ties worked for the CIA, has no real journalism experience before taking the job at CNN. He's also a Vanderbilt. He sucked too, man. He was really nervous. You notice I'm reading through his cards. He's like, Hillary Clinton.
Underestimate the Russians as president, what would your response to Vladimir Putin be right now in Syria?
He was really nervous. He did a horrible job. Again, nothing even against Anderson Pooper, but he sucked it up last night. You could tell that he was very uncomfortable asking critical questions that were already prepared for him by CNN to people like Hillary Clinton. Because, again, he's not a real journalist. He doesn't ask critical questions. He's really just a lapdog. That's what CNN is. They are a lapdog. So the two standouts were Hillary Clinton, who obviously won, and I'm not happy about that, but she did. Bernie Sanders endorsed her, which I found absolutely incredible. And everybody else is just a stooge. You know, O'Malley looks presidential. He does, but he's an absolute stooge. He has nothing intelligent to say. I mean, I was thinking to myself, is this really the best that we have in America? We've got 5 stooges up there. We've got Hillary Clinton, who's literally been in Washington, D.C. forever. I mean, she's about to croak on stage last night. She's almost pushing her 70s, for crying out loud. She's a very, very unhealthy woman. She's got all kinds of health problems, and this is the best we've got. It was completely rehearsed, completely staged, and completely choreographed. Because, again, there is no system in America. That's the takeaway. The GOP and the DNC are no different. Now, the GOP candidate's a lot stronger. In my opinion, Trump, an outsider to the GOP establishment, a lot stronger, a lot more exciting to watch. But it's all a part of the same narrative. It's all a part of the same bullshit, this new one world order paradigm that makes up the two-party system as they pitch it to us, but is really just one party. You don't have a choice. You know, I just think, in my personal humble opinion, that Trump would be the best of all the worst options. Because at least he would slow down the tyranny here in the United States for the time being, before a revolution. Revolution, 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 revolution. Again, is this the best we got in America? 5 freaking stooges that made up the DNC. Bernie Sanders would not lay into the email scandal. You notice how they talked about it's completely diametrically opposed from the GOP debate talking points and the DNC talking points. They talked about immigration, building Trump's wall, keep preventing all the immigrants from coming into America, which I agree with. And then the DNC debate, the only thing they talked about was Ferguson, race, Black Lives Matter. Also, that stood out Bernie Sanders. He said Black Lives Matter. He just ignored the rest of the population. Not all lives. They asked him, do black lives or do all lives matter? Well, obviously all lives matter. If you just say Black Lives Matter, you're playing into the mainstream media bullshit narrative to divide and conquer us, to create this divisiveness.
My question for the candidates is, do Black Lives Matter or do all lives matter?
There was also a key moment where O'Malley, a freaking stooge, although he looks presidential, tried to pull at America's heartstrings, but it was played off horribly. You could tell he had rehearsed it like 10 times. He was like, well, there's a couple people in the stands tonight that lost a child because of gun crime. You know, one of these false flag gun rampages of these psychopaths that go and kill people, allegedly in schools, and then they rerun the footage, no matter if it was the Aurora shooting or any of these other shootings, Sandy Hook, etc.
We passed comprehensive gun safety legislation, not by looking at the pollings or looking at what the polls said. We actually did it. And Anderson, here tonight in our audience, are 2 people that make this issue very, very real. Sandy and Lonnie Phillips are here from Colorado. And their daughter, Jessie, was one of those who lost their lives in that awful mass shooting in Aurora. Now, to try to transform their grief, they went to court, where sometimes progress does happen when you file in court. But in this case, you want to talk about a rigged game, Senator? The game was rigged.
So they definitely played up the race card, CNN did, the race issue, create all of this divisiveness. And it just goes to show you how bad off America really is. I mean, these people are not even talented. They're not even good speakers. I'm sorry, Bernie Sanders sucks. He's not a good speaker. Hillary Clinton, a friggin' drone, a witch, a callous whore, a criminal who plays up her feminism, which is amazing to me. I mean, if the debaters and her opponents, even though they're not opponents because they're giving her the DNC, they're actually endorsing her, people like Bernie Sanders, they would ask her critical questions about her husband, the fact that he's a womanizer, that he's a predator, that he's allegedly raped multiple women, that he had sexual affairs with people like Monica Lewinsky and then lied to the American public on the stand, a felony.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
Which should put him in pound him in the ass federal prison. But nobody talked about any of that. No, because it's all choreographed. It's all staged. And it just shows you, again, what a shit show this whole thing is. You know, the ratings were far higher in the GOP debate. In fact, they were talking about last night how Trump was live tweeting it. That was actually more major news than the actual DNC itself. Just horrible. Disgusting. It only shows...
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Now, I want to point out something about the Trump live tweeting during the Democratic debate and how that actually did become somewhat bigger news than the debate. And when that was going on, and all I was seeing was things popping up about Trump tweeting this, Trump tweeting that, it kind of made me think. And I started looking at a lot of the alternative media jumping behind Trump. And it kind of really startled me that so much of libertarian-leaning people are jumping behind Trump. And not all of them. There's some pretty well-known libertarian outlets that are not jumping on Trump's bandwagon, but there's other ones that are libertarian-leaning that are. And if you listen to his rhetoric, he is not about freedom. He is about freedom for certain people. When you understand the core principle of freedom, you don't say, freedom for these people, but the other people just need to get in line up for freedom. And that's kind of counter to freedom in the historic sense of America. And people are like, oh, the Native Americans and the slaves, and you know, America was bad. Yeah, there's some effed up crap in American history. But we also had some relationships. You know, everybody thinks of the Alamo. But we don't think of the free trade and the free movement and the free interactions of what was then more white Americans and the Hispanic, what is now Mexico, some parts of Texas, when it wasn't something about battling over area. What a lot of people don't know is, hey, the border didn't used to be guarded, and there was towns on both sides of the border that it was just, there wasn't no restriction on movement. They crossed that border daily and interacted, and things went along just fine. It's when you start drawing the borders that people start getting a little pissed, because now there's a border I can't cross without my papers. Kind of sound familiar? They try to bully you into that. If you leave your property, oh, if you're on your property, why are you filming us? I need to see your ID. Get off my property. I need to see your ID. Don't go in the house. I'll tase you. You're resisting arrest. So, things don't get the way they are now without a gradual upbeat, but to understand the fundamentals of freedom, you can read rhetoric a lot easier to understand what someone is saying and thinking. And that's really how you could go back in, Obama's videos and see what he's saying and hear the key words, the key phrases that if you're just blindly listening to it, it sounds awesome. If you listen carefully, a lot of people go, he promised all this. Well, he promised something. The way he worded it confused you. And he knew what, whether it's him or his speechwriter, whoever came up with the wording, and I'm sure it was him saying what he wants to. I want it to sound like this, but we need to be able to, say it in a certain way. You know what I'm saying. And they do this in politics all the time. And you can go back and look at before Obama with George Bush. His pro-constitutional, pro-this, pro-freedom, and listen real carefully to his speeches. There's keywords that hint you into what he means by that. So, when we look at why Hillary won the debate, because people blindly listen to politicians, blindly listen to Bernie Sanders. And then they trust in Bernie, and Bernie doesn't hate Hillary, so I shouldn't hate Hillary. Blind submission to the propaganda, to the brainwashing, without critically thinking and critically analyzing what's being said and what's being portrayed. Again, why political theater just irks me anymore. I tend to dislike it. Okay. Let me move on here. Give me a second. Maybe. Maybe it's not going to come up. Oh, here it goes. Washington Times. Says here, ammo control picks up steam among Democrats aiming to limit gun access. Why is it that we have background checks for guns but not background checks for ammunition? It makes no sense. With 300 million firearms in circulation and calls for more restrictions hitting a wall, Democrats and gun control advocates from California and Virginia are increasingly turning to other proposals such as restricting ammunition and magazine rounds and narrowing the ability to wield weapons. California Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, who is running for the Democratic gubernatorial nomination in 2018, released a statewide ballot campaign Thursday to require background checks for ammunition purchases. Why is it that we have background checks for guns and not for ammunition? He said at a press conference in San Francisco. California can set the tone for the rest of the nation with these common sense public safety provisions, he said. We will lead the nation. We will be the only state in America that has background checks on point of sale purchases of ammunition, unquote. Sorry. Stupid pop-up. Pop-up, pop-up, pop-up. Gotta love it. Okay. Get back to this article now. The proposed 2016 initiative would require instant background checks at the point of sale and ban the possessions. Hold on. Freaking ads. Where was that? Here it is. At the point of sale and ban the possession of ammunition magazines with over 10 rounds. Given that California already bans the sale of manufacture magazines over 10 rounds, the proposal would give California the toughest ammo restrictions in the nation. New York also requires instant ammunition background checks as part of its 2013 SAFE Act, but Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, suspended the provision in July, citing an inadequate state database. New York tried. California will be the first to do it, said Newsom. California will step up and step into this debate in a meaningful way. And I'll say this to the NRA with all due respect, that you can intimidate politicians. We've seen them, but you can't intimidate the public. That's why we're bringing this directly to the public. Efforts to restrict ammunition may sound less alarming to the average voter than attempts to ban guns, but they're no more acceptable to gun rights advocates who vowed to fight the proposed California initiative. Gavin Newsom wants to declare war on law-abiding gun owners and Second Amendment rights. We're certainly going to bring the fight to him, Firearms Policy Coalition President Brandon Combs said in a statement. The Newsom measure would require owners to report lost or stolen guns to law enforcement and would set up a process to confiscate firearms from illegal owners such as felons. Amy Hunter, a spokeswoman for the National Rifle Association Institute for Legislative Action, said the effort to restrict ammunition sales represents another step in the march to erode the rights of law-abiding gun owners. Quote, California illustrates the true gun control agenda, which is sorry. Says here, which ultimately confiscation banning of firearms. If Gavin Newsom gets his way, the state will be the next Australia, Ms. Hunter said in a statement. his ballot initiative proposal does nothing but prohibit access to the most effective methods for self-defense with no measurable positive effect on stopping crime or improving public safety, she said. They can't repeal the Second Amendment, so they're trying to chip away our rights until there's nothing left. The order also sets up a joint task force to prosecute gun crimes, requires the tracing of every gun used in a crime, and gives the Attorney General power for more robust prosecution of gun crimes. They don't define in that what is a gun crime and a legitimate use of force, which I don't believe it's force, it's a counter force if you're using it lawfully. And again, that was at Washington Times with all their pop-up ads. Something you don't get on all the alternative media. Pop-up ad here. 100 of them popping up with the videos. Just nuts. But something they've been doing for a while is trying to chip away at gun rights, and we've been able to counteract them for a while, but here's another article about Hillary Clinton, nationwide gun ban, repeal of Second Amendment worth considering. And this one's at Infowars.com, Kit Daniels. Hillary Clinton said it's worth considering a nationwide gun ban and a buyback program to eradicate private gun ownership. The presidential candidate attacked the Second Amendment during an October 16th town hall meeting in which she was asked if it were feasible for the U.S. to confiscate millions of firearms in a year. You know, Australia is a good example. Canada is a good example. The UK is a good example. Why? Because each of them had mass killings. Australia had a huge mass killing about 20 or 25 years ago. Canada did as well. So did the UK. In reaction, they passed much stricter gun laws. In the Australian example, as I recall, that was a buyback program. The Australian government, as part of trying to clamp down on the availability of weapons, offered a good price for buying hundreds of thousands of guns and basically clamped down going forward in terms of having more of a background check approach, more of a permitting approach. But they believed, and I think the evidence supports them, that by offering to buy back those guns, they were able to, curtail the supply and set a different standard for gun purchases in the future. Again, I've shared clips and information that counteracts that, where they estimate a 60 to 80% of the guns are still there in Australia illegally. So their buyback didn't win. But Clinton also mentioned that several U.S. cities have done gun buyback programs, and it would be worth considering on a national level. But she failed to mention that she supported shipping guns to Syrian rebels, the majority of whom are either ISIS militants or affiliated with the Islamic State. In fact, she was the biggest cheerleader for redistributing these arms to Syrian rebels, presidential candidate Rand Paul told Fox News in July. The reason this is an important issue is many of these people who received the arms are not friends of America. Many of them are linked to Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra, and some of these weapons may well have ended up in the hands of people who became ISIS. Virtually all the rebels in Syria have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. The Free Syrian Army and the Syrian National Council, the vaunted bulwarks of the moderate opposition, only really exists in hotel lobbies and the minds of Western diplomats, journalist Ben Reynolds wrote in November. There is simply no real separation between moderate rebel groups and hardline Salafists allied with Al-Qaeda. The New York Times made a similar statement. Nowhere in rebel-controlled Syria is there a secular fighting force to speak of, the newspaper reported in 2013. Again, that was at Infowars.com. So, it's kind of like Fast and Furious. We want to take your guns away. But you just got caught shipping guns or allowing guns to be sold to drug cartels. But the mass shootings in America can be stopped now. Why do Americans need these scary assault rifles? Didn't the drug cartels buy a whole bunch of AK-47s? Wouldn't that be a good reason to protect ourselves from the criminals, some evil people that now are armed with assault rifles? Because the hypocriticalness of government is so apparent that it's really hard to ignore it anymore. It's kind of in your face, should we say? Okay. Now, kind of moving along. Reason put out a clip, a little 6-minute clip about pot being legal in Colorado, so why can't you smoke it anywhere? And I wanted to play this because it's another thing. We're constantly fighting the back and forth with it's legal, but you can't have it, or it's not illegal, but you don't want to get caught with it. Or it's not illegal, but don't do it. And it's kind of more of that brainwashing by confusing the public to go along with what they're told at the moment. So a cop walks up, show me your ID. Is it the law? Yep. Okay. Whether it is or not. Okay, let's go ahead and cue this up here.
People have the right to freely associate in private and to join together as private membership groups. You might not want to join a cannabis club, but you certainly cannot stop people from doing that.
On January 1st, 2014, recreational marijuana became legal in Colorado. There's just one small problem.
People can buy it, they can use it, but in a lot of cases, they don't have anywhere where they can use it legally.
That's right. Weed is legal in Colorado, but it's illegal to use it at any public location. It's become a huge issue for a state that's attracting record numbers of tourists who are curious to try cannabis, but have no safe legal place to do so. In fact, public consumption citations rose 471% in the first year of legalization, and fines average $100 per ticket. Local business owner Ryan Connolly says he noticed the problem when out-of-towners began to come to his store looking for help.
Once customers started buying legal weed, they would come to our store and shop for clothes and always ask us the question, since we're locals, where can I smoke this? And this question started to happen more and more, where we actually just couldn't really ignore it anymore.
So Ryan, who runs the Grassroots clothing store and is the founder of the 710 Cannabis Cup, devised a solution using space in his own store.
We created it into a private members break room that was a private member-based 21 or over word-of-mouth membership club where you could consume cannabis. And it was a BYOB establishment So you would go to the dispensary and then now have your safe place to smoke.
Ryan created a private club with the help of Jeff Gard, a Boulder attorney who had successfully established private marijuana clubs in several other Colorado counties.
I did my homework on it, and I found out that there is an exception to the Colorado Indoor Air Act for private member clubs. So the VFW, the Odd Fellows, the Elks Club, things of that nature. So every person that wants to consume marijuana at the break room has to join the membership, has to be approved by the people who are already members, and then again their dues go solely to pay for the overhead.
Under this private membership model, Ryan's break room tallied 4,000 members in just over a year. Even stars like Cheech Marin stopped by when visiting Denver to use the facility. The private pot club operated without incident until one weekend in April.
The government resistance to 420 was pretty strong already, but strangely enough became a much more concerted, organized effort by the city of Denver this year after marijuana had been legalized. And among these things also, a decision was made by the Denver Police Department as well as the city attorney's office to crack down on private membership clubs. And among those clubs that were targeted was my client's club. And so what happens is officers sort of doing their homework about this, found out about the club, and then posing as prospective members, they basically lied their way into the club.
On 4/19, I want to say around like 5 or 6 o'clock, I saw about 15 or 20 plainclothes officers come in. And at first they were, a little aggressive, but weren't too bad. But they were like, you know why we're here.
When they got back there, they kind of, I think, were a little surprised to find that this is a private membership club, that they had to sign up as members to become part of it, that there wasn't anything going on from the perspective of the break room that was arguably illegal.
Though Denver police did not charge any of the members with a crime, they cited Ryan for operating a marijuana business without a license and for violating the Clean Indoor Air Act.
It's stressful because we tried to do everything in our power to separate the two different staffs, two different point-of-sale systems. Which is interesting. The police counted our money, went through our point-of-sale system, and didn't take any of it. I believe truly that they did not think we were actually selling anything.
But Ryan's ordeal didn't end there. After citing him for licensing violations, the city went one step further and threatened Ryan's landlord with a public nuisance abatement if they didn't evict him from the premises.
The eviction is what hurts the most. We have over 20 staff that I want to make sure we keep jobs for all of them.
Ryan appeared in court in July and paid his fines. When we visited, he was in the middle of packing up his business and looking for a new location to move his store. Though Ryan lost his space, he's hopeful that this experience will bring about a change in the current law.
I think it's, the people's choice now to step up and look at these instances where they're still wasting our taxpayers' money and going after something you would think would be a respectable thing to do, which is offer someone from out of state a safe place to smoke.
People who have similar interests and similar hobbies or whatever have the right to freely associate in private and to join together as private membership groups. You might not want to join a cannabis club, but you certainly cannot stop people from doing that.
As Ryan moves forward, a debate is now unfolding between marijuana policy advocates and city leaders on how to address the public consumption issue. Denver's Office of Marijuana Policy says Amendment 64 clearly states that marijuana is only to be used for private and personal use, and that the initiative was not designed to accommodate tourists. But that hasn't stopped visitors or local residents from consuming pot in public, which is why Mason Tivert of the Marijuana Policy Project is hoping a compromise can be reached.
We don't want a separate but equal system here. We want adults who enjoy using marijuana to be able to associate with adults who enjoy using alcohol, and as long as it's only people 21 and older, there's really shouldn't be a problem with that.
The majority of people are not scofflaws. We understand that rules are necessary for ordered society, so just tell us where to go. Tell us where we can do this, and we will go do that. And it makes perfect sense that if you want to quit writing public consumption tickets, if you want to have a positive image, if you will, and from the perspective of the government, that marijuana is not the only thing that's going on in Colorado right now, then creating a private environment for that makes perfect sense.
And again, that was from Reason. can also find Reason TV on YouTube. Now, it's also a perfect example of when the outsider follows the law, they still get harassed and robbed of money. But when a insider breaks the law, they can laugh it off on camera, and you can say what you want about Hillary. There's pretty good evidence that there were definitely shady things going on. Somewhere in the whole system, there were shady things going on. Can't find all the emails. Oh, here they are. This is going. It was ran from a bathroom. Something was off about the whole situation. I think for anyone to ignore that, they're kind of ignoring the truth. Now, I also want to share something from Ben Swan and Truth in Media. Ben Swan wants to start a global activist. I'm going to play this short clip here.
My name is Ben Swan, and we are traveling the world to hear the voices of change.
As you can see, they're closing off the roads and the crowd keeps growing.
Only Mexicans can save Mexico.
And to get an in-depth look at the issues affecting their lives.
We have heard nothing from the mayor except for we are thugs.
These activists are going against the grain.
Baltimore, Ferguson, no matter where it is, when you have social injustice in impoverished areas, like it's kind of like a ticking time bomb.
This is not what democracy looks like.
This is Global Activist.
Well, I'm a true addict. Oh, shit, I got a head rush.
Hey there guys, Ben Swan here, and I am so excited to officially announce to you today the creation of the first ever show dedicated to activists and global protest movements. That's right, the name of the show is Global Activist, and there's nothing like it on television, streaming, or cable. Here's a sneak peek, take a look.
Mexico City, one of the most populated cities on Earth, the center of multiple cultures and empires for thousands of years, and now ground zero for a rising justice movement in Mexico.
How was your brother killed?
In September of 2014, 43 college students in the small town of Iguala, Mexico were murdered. The mayor of that small town and his wife charged with ordering their deaths. But what started out as a few dozen parents demanding answers has exploded into marches and protests of over 50,000 people at a time.
We're underneath the Angel of Independence in the center of Mexico City, and there are tens of thousands of people around us. They are demanding justice, and they are demanding reform.
So these students are carrying a giant flag, but it says, "The state is dead."
To understand how these protests got started, we sent Jasmine Monroy to speak with some of the family members of those 43 missing students.
Okay, I'm going to start there. He's doing an Indigo fundraiser for this. Now, another thing that we see is there is a legitimate uprise around the globe. Now, it might not be properly steered, but there is a legitimate uprise. It's here in America. It's, all around the world. And there is somewhat of a global awakening happening. Now, the internet has provided us a great tool to share the philosophy of freedom and independence and the voluntarily interacting with people, the non-aggression principle, things of that nature where you're not going to stop all crime. It's not going to happen. What you do is you have the tools to defend yourself. You have a community that, we already rely on each other without understanding it because so much of it is done in dollars. So your interactions, you look at more at the dollar. Oh, I got shorted that dollar. So your interactions sometimes don't come off like they should. And then internet can also play a role in that too with people that are addicted to social media and don't understand really a difference between reality and the fallacy that many people live in social media, definitely the younger crowds. But with this global awakening, we also have people that are understanding that the system's corrupt, but they, like many people have been told, this is a free market system and this is capitalism. Well, people understand that the system screws them. But if they don't know the truth about the system, that it's not free market, it's not capitalism, there are permits, there are licenses, there are regulations that the big corporations can afford to pay a fine on and you can't. There are many things that prevent it from being a free market. There's a Federal Reserve in our monetary policy. We don't live in a free market. We live in the crony capitalism, maybe corporatism. And elitism. So when people go, this is capitalism, this is free market, we should keep our system. We should have a free market and capitalism. Well, if you understand the true meaning of free market capitalism, you would like free market capitalism because it allows you to prosper just as much as the next person. But you understand we don't have that. Well, if you don't understand and someone goes, the opposite of this system is socialism, you might go, well, I know this system don't work, so I'll go with that. Well, it's again playing the two-party system in a way, where really you're getting corporatism and socialism, and both of them kind of lead to a fascism or communism or, authoritarian government. And again, you keep feeding the system because then it creates more and more rules and regulations, and they claim more and more authority over people and their rights and their lives. To a point, it doesn't matter which one's in power because they're both going to screw you royally. And then you look at how well the libertarian or constitutional or justice or Green Party does, which I think all of those are even in a way not completely what they say to be or their title claims to be. Green Party, I think they play into the propaganda, the libertarian and constitutional parties They tend to play into some of the, we should just end it all tomorrow. At least a lot of their supporters that I've met can be some pretty extreme ones where I say there has to be a gradual step down. Otherwise, we do get chaos. And part of it is allowing people to keep part of their money before you start taking benefits away. But many people, when they talk about we need to take benefits away, raise taxes. That's not our debt. I'm sorry. You guys screwed yourselves up. That means you're just not going to be able to have taxpayers pay for any of your crap anymore. You can live at the White House, but any electric bill you run up is your electric bill. Hey. I don't think they would like that. But we really don't see any truly serious candidates. I can't look at Donald Trump as a serious candidate when it comes to getting more freedom. I think people go, he makes all this money, so, he can't be bought. Well, all that money doesn't mean he can't be bought. It also might mean that he'll bite on anything that makes him a buck. He looks at everything as a business opportunity. And if you're in a position of power, we know insider trading is okay for Congress to do. He'd be in a position to probably amass a little bit more wealth through policy and playing along with the system. There's certain things that people are liking. The illegal immigrants, which I'm for open borders, just not for people to control the open border to funnel people in for purposes. That's where I have the problem with it. We know they've been trying that. He might do certain things that people like, but I think in the end that he would play the system to his advantage and to the advantage of the rest of the politicians. Because in the end, they got to work together, remember? Mainstream media tells you all the time that they just got to work together. Get the same old crap over and over. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and I will catch you next week. Sorry about the rebroad this Wednesday, and we'll try to get this audio problem fixed at the beginning of the broadcast. Stay tuned here on UCY.TV for all the great broadcasts coming up after this. Don't forget to support UCY and all the other broadcasts on this network by going to UCY.TV and clicking the UCY support tab. And thank you all again for tuning in. Great broadcasts coming up after this. And stay tuned all weekend here to UCY.TV. Try the TuneIn app. Take care.